I just finished Howling Dark by Christopher Ruocchio, and the blurb reads, Hadrian Marlowe is lost. For half a century he has searched for father sons for the lost planet of Vorgossos, hoping to find a way to contact the elusive alien Sealson. He has not succeeded, and for years has wandered among the barbarian Normans as captain of a band of mercenaries. Determined to make peace and bring an end to nearly 400 years of war, Hadrian must venture beyond the security of the Solan Empire and among the extrasolarians who dwell between the stars. There he will face not only the aliens he has come to offer peace, but contend with creatures that were once human, with traitors in his midst, and with a meeting that will bring him face to face with no less than the oldest enemy of mankind. If he succeeds, he will usher in a peace unlike any in recorded history. If he fails, the galaxy will burn. So yes, this is the second book in the Sun Eater series, which I am continuing to absolutely devour. And if you have not seen my first video, my first blurble reasoning on Empire of Silence, I recommend giving it a listen because I do talk at length about things which remain true here, such as this is exactly the flavour of science fiction that I was looking for, and it's really fun to see epic fantasy kind of like tropes blended into this genre as well. In this book, spoilers in effect, we venture out from the safety of the empire that was established in the first book, and we get to see what the universe looks like from the extrasolarian point of view, even though the extrasolarians are not a single people. The interesting thing about the start of this book is that it begins with a giant time skip and doesn't really elaborate on why. I mean, the blurb does. I never read the blurb until after I've read the book because I feel like it gives away too many spoilers and sets too many expectations. I like to go in as blind as possible. But yeah, basically, I guess Ruocchio probably wanted to establish that Hadrian has been out and about. He has gained combat experience. He has evolved as a human being in terms of leadership and, you know, growing into this new type of mercenary captain character, although he wasn't the captain, but you know what I mean. By the end of this book, he definitely has fully blossomed into being a leader of men, and it kind of starts here. And so it's interesting to like do this time skip because especially at the end of the last book we were seeing like this blossoming romance between him and Volker, and then at the start of this book he's been in a relationship with a woman called Jeannon for like 12 years or something, and of course the function of that relationship is to have him learn and grow and you know, have experience in relationships and have a relationship to compare his future relationship with Volker to, I suppose. But it was definitely like, I thought we were going somewhere with that. And of course we do, but, you know, at the start of the book, you're like, wait, Jeannon, that's not who I was shipping you with, protagonist. Side note, but I love how long it takes for the Volker-Hadrian romance to fully blossom because, you know, it really lends independence to Volker's character. I think a lot of fiction, it can be a little bit too much like, here's the love interest, they exist to serve the protagonist, you know, and that's definitely not the case with Volker, and I think having them be not together for so long really allowed her to be introduced and grow as a character outside of Hadrian in a lot of ways, and it makes it more meaningful when they do get together as well, I think. So yeah, the bulk of this book centers around exploring outside the Empire's, you know, restrictions and like seeing what technology can do in this universe when it's not being constrained by laws and ethics, I guess, although the Empire and ethics don't always go hand in hand, as we've seen. The comparisons to epic fantasy continue, and we get to see you know, things like the SOMs, which are basically just undead, people whose insides have been replaced by so much machine work that they have no free will and are basically just remote-controlled soldiers. We meet Khan Sagara, the oldest man in the galaxy, and we see how he works his regenerative magic, I suppose, and how fucked up it is that he's basically growing clones and then taking over their bodies when he needs to. And then the other side of this book is we also see Hadrian trying to make peace with the Sealson as he wanted to do from the first book, but as he learns more about the Sealson, we learn how untenable that becomes, or at least from his perspective anyway. I'm still not sure I completely agree that peace was impossible with a Sealson, but this is something that Hadrian does keep relaying to the reader of like, I was so stupid back then for thinking that I could make peace with these savage creatures and stuff. And I think the reason why we spend so long at the beginning of this series trying to make peace with a Sealson is because we're going to spend a lot of time fighting them and a lot of time portraying them as other, and it can be a little bit problematic, I think, in terms of like, here is other race who are not humans. Let's go and conquer them. We're the good guys. We have bad history with that in our past. Not with non-humans, of course, but with dehumanizing humans. And so it's interesting that we spend so much time establishing how legitimately different they are from us in terms of like, they literally don't have a word for peace. Their word for peace is subservience. And yeah, that's why it's so difficult to strike a peace bargain with them and stuff. But damn it, if the humans of Star Trek could make peace with the Klingons, I'm sure we could have made it work with the Sealsin if we'd just kept trying. I have yet to be convinced. We will see if future books convince me that it is not the case. Because it is interesting. We do get continually reminded as we read through this that, like, he's equal parts hero and villain. He's equal parts savior and destroyer. And he makes many decisions I do not agree with, such as murdering a child hostage. When he does that, I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm supposed to not like this guy. But of course, my favourite kind of fiction does include grey characters. Of course, it's why Song of Ice and Fire was so good. People who do terrible things but still have genuine love in their hearts. That's such like a complex human thing. And like, what do you feel about such people? The world isn't just good and evil. And yeah, it's fun to explore a world where it's not that. And characters do awful things. And they still do good things afterwards, and they still do awful things after that, and they still do good things after that, and on and on and on and on and on. It was interesting to meet Brethren, who's basically artificial intelligence, and learn a little bit more lore about the Americani, who are clearly the ancient Americans, and like the machine lords and stuff like that. It's interesting that Brethren is basically, from what I understand, using logic to calculate different outcomes to such a degree, to such a precise degree, that it's able to predict the future with some amount of reliability. Like, they call Hadrian half mortal before that ever happens outside of that cave. And it's interesting to have, you know, there's a lot of foretelling in this book, and a lot of like the fringes of science, of like believability, plausibility, just like the whole vision with the Quiet in the first book. If there is one prevailing theme throughout this book, it's that the universe is a stranger place than the Empire would have you believe. And so when Hadrian gets to meet that kind of fortune teller who's been possessed by the deeps, I think that was what they were called, the deeps, for depths, for deeps, for deep, I don't know. And they get confused about the fact that clearly something I'm not sure has been overtly relayed to us yet, but clearly Hadrian died when he was trying to escape from his home planet, and when he washed up on a mesh, I think he was supposed to be dead then, but he got brought back, and that's why like his past is severed or whatever, and then his future is severed as well because he dies at the end of his book in the fight against Prince Aranata. By the way, did you notice that Tanaran is almost a perfect anagram for Aranata? Anyway, so what's been taught to us about the Quiet, and my basic understanding of them, is that they are and again, this hasn't really been overtly told to us, but I think we're supposed to be able to figure it out. They are a race of people who exist in the future, or a possible future, who are trying to guide the past to allow that version of the future that they exist in to exist so that they can continue to exist. And I think basically the way they saved Hadrian, who is instrumental in apparently creating this future in which the Quiet can exist, I think the way they saved him was by like converging a timeline with another one in which he didn't die, which is why the wrong arm of his gets chopped off. But the interesting part about that to me is that like, it's not just that they stuffed Hadrian's soul or whatever into a different version of him, because otherwise he would be the only person who would know that he was supposed to be dead. No, the people see him die and come back, and there's interesting things as well about like, oh, he had his sword on him, and the sword where it was left on the grass was no longer there, and like, but his arm was still, his right arm, which he still had attached, was still dismembered floating down a river, and he had like this instinctual horror to like kick it away before anyone could see it. And you know, it's all interesting kind of like fucking with time stuff that I really enjoy actually. And so it's interesting that we've got like this mysterious race of people down a future timeline trying to guide events through Hadrian to make sure that it's the timeline that they want it to be. I'm going to call it now. They're going to be us in the far future. They're just going to be humans. But also, you know, there's these allusions to like, they guided the growth of humanity, but they also guided the growth of the Sealsin. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about them. There are so many great little moments in this book, which I don't want to go over every single detail. I just kind of want to show up here in this video and be like, this was so good, because that's what I'm here to do. But like the betrayal of Switch, you know, how he betrayed Hadrian and how he felt about that, and how Hadrian, before he did like the obvious like evil act of killing a child hostage, he was going down this dark path of, first of all, when he was fighting Bassenger Lin, he severed this platform and ended up killing 3 people who were supposed to be his soldiers or on his side or whatever, part of a red company, and betraying Jinan as well to end that relationship. And like, how do you feel about that, putting the mission before the personal stuff? This book was just so good, and if I'm honest, it's weird because I don't really just want to sit here and talk about the book. I don't want to do a deep dive on the book. I just want to read the next one. So I think I'm gonna leave it here. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this was satisfying for you to listen to. And let me know if there's anything specifically you want my thoughts on about this book in the comments below. And I will catch you in whatever I make next. I'm off to read Demon in White!